Think you've seen everything on the savanna? Last night, veteran ranger Aaron watched a lioness, Suri, nurse an orphaned zebra. From that moment, rules, opinions, and predators closed in. In a 48-hour brink of life and loss, Aaron must choose: separate them by the book or guard an unlikely family. Until dawn, when Suri teaches her foster child to run back to its herd with one stern note, a lesson in fear that lets it live. The collar ping came thin and steady through Aaron and Lovu's radio, a little heartbeat of static from the northern flats. He parked the Land Cruiser in the shade of a lone acacia and walked the last stretch, moving slow the way years of patrol had taught him. The grass was high and brittle from the dry season, and the wind combed it in long, whispering strokes. Beyond a knoll of red earth, he saw her, Suri, the old lioness, curled around something small and trembling. Aaron lifted his binoculars, ready for the usual: a carcass, a cub, the plain story of the wild. But the picture that sharpened in his lenses made him lower the glass and blink. A zebra foal, its knees still knobby, stripes soft as brush strokes, pressed close to Suri's belly, nuzzling with the clumsy insistence of the very young. Suri didn't flinch. She shifted just enough to make space. The foal found what it sought, and the world narrowed to the small sound of nursing and the steady rise and fall of a lioness's ribs. Behind Aaron, a twig snapped. Tariq, the new intern with more eagerness than sense, had followed at a distance. His breath hitched. His camera clicked, once, twice, like tiny hammers tapping glass. "Easy," Aaron murmured without turning. "No sudden moves, no more pictures." Tariq lowered the camera, eyes huge. "Sir, this is—" "I know what it is," Aaron said. He did not smile. The moment felt too fragile for that, like a soap bubble drifting through thorns. He knelt, elbows on his knees, and let the scene breathe. Suri's ear flicked at a fly. The foal's tail twitched. A lark tried a few hopeful notes and gave up. Aaron's mind sifted through years of rules and reports, protocols he'd written, lectures he'd delivered. Predators are not foster mothers to prey. Interference invites chaos. Document, report. Let nature keep its own books. But nature, it seemed, had filed a different entry today. "Mark this location," he said quietly, "and then we forget it." Tariq frowned. "Sir, we watch from a distance. We make sure no one blunders in with a drone and a headline. We give them time, her to heal, him to stand." A breeze lifted, carrying the faint, warm scent of milk. Aaron felt something in his chest answer it, an old ache turning softly toward light. He clicked off his radio as if even that small voice could break the spell, and settled in to keep the longest, gentlest vigil of his life. By late afternoon, the radio was alive again, this time with voices instead of beeps. Aaron drove back to base in a hush, dust trailing the truck like a veil. In the briefing room, the light was flat and honest. Dr. Mara Okoth stood by the whiteboard, sleeves rolled, calm as usual. Warden Kamau leaned against the map cabinet, jaw set. Tariq slid into a chair, clutching his field notebook like a life preserver. Aaron spoke first. "We have an unusual bond in the northern flats. Suri is sheltering a zebra foal. He's weak but responsive. No immediate distress. I recommend we stay hands-off for now, observe from distance." Kamau's eyebrows climbed. "A predator nursing prey is not a policy category, Aaron. The public will not understand it. Separate the foal, transfer to rehab, file the incident." Mara cleared her throat, measured and careful. "If we move the foal now, his stress load could spike. He's relying on warmth and steady contact. Nutrition is a puzzle, yes, but separation today may do more harm than good." She looked at Aaron. "What's your window?" 48 hours, he said. "Give me that to monitor. If there's decline, we intervene. If there's stability, we reassess." Kamau exhaled through his nose. You're asking me to ignore protocol. I'm asking you to let me be accountable for a very narrow exception, Aaron replied. We keep the site dark. No visitors, no drones. We record quietly. We protect both animals from attention. Tariq lifted a tentative hand. Sir, what if this is important for public education? If people saw... Not yet, Aaron said, gentle but firm. A moment like that can't survive a crowd. Silence settled, broken only by the hum of the ceiling fan. Finally, Mara spoke. Medically, I can support 48 hours with strict monitoring. I'll prep electrolyte solution in case the Foal flags. We'll ready a transfer crate, but keep it staged. Kamau crossed to the desk, signed a form, and tore it off. Conditional authorization, he said, handing the paper to Aaron, and a written warning. If this goes sideways, it's on you. Aaron nodded, accepting the weight. Understood. They set the watch schedule. Mara at dawn for vitals from a distance. Tariq on midday perimeter, with binoculars only. Aaron on dusk and night, the long hours when the grass comes alive. As the meeting broke, Kamau paused at the door. 48 hours, no more. 48, Aaron said. Outside, the sky was turning the color of cooled embers. He headed for the truck, feeling both the edge of a rule and the pull of a promise. 2 lines he would have to walk without slipping. Dusk came on like a slow tide, washing the color out of the flats until only shapes and edges remained. Aaron eased the truck onto a game trail, then walked the last half-mile with a burlap satchel over his shoulder. In it he carried what the night respected, a few flares, a tin of fish oil to drag as a decoy scent, and patience. The wind had turned fickle, and that worried him more than anything. Scent runs on the wind like a whispered rumor, and rumors draw company. He reached the knoll where he'd watched them before. Suri lay half-curled, her breath a steady engine in the grass. Nuru leaned against her belly, dozing and then waking, that bobbing, startled sleep of the very young. Aaron crouched and glassed the horizon. On the far rim, a line of shadows seemed to detach from the ground and begin to stitch toward him one by one, low and tireless. Hyenas reading the same wind he did. He moved quickly, but without rush, the way experience teaches. He dragged the fish oil in a crooked path toward a dry wash, dabbed it heavy under a thorn bush, and set 2 flares on the lip of the gully, ready but hidden. If the scavengers followed their noses, they'd find the stronger trail first and argue with a hole in the earth instead of a sleeping child and a tired mother. Behind him, a pebble ticked down the slope. Tariq eased up beside him, eyes wide. "Perimeter's clear," the young man whispered. "I did a loop. No people." "Good," Aaron said. "Keep it that way." Tariq hesitated, then showed his phone. Brightness dimmed. 2 photos from earlier shimmered on the screen. Suri's flank, Nuru's small head, buried in tawny fur. "I took these by reflex," he said. "I thought maybe it could help people care." Aaron looked at him for a long moment. "Lock them. Don't send. Not yet." Tariq nodded, but his thumb hovered a heartbeat too long before the screen went dark. A breeze freshened. The hyenas angled, then broke, quarreling over the baited scent. Suri's ears lifted. Aaron held still, counting time by breath. Nuru stirred and shifted, and that was when he saw it, a thin, dark line on the foal's hip, no wider than a reed. Not a bite, a scrape where a hurried paw had pulled him through grass spiked with old seed heads. Love doesn't always have gentle hands, he thought, and the idea sat heavy and true. The night settled deeper. Somewhere a jackal called and was answered. Aaron stayed until stars filled the wash like spilled salt, then backed away the way he'd come, leaving the decoy to hold the argument with hunger and the gentle pair to sleep through whatever peace the dark would grant them. Morning broke with a thrum in the air that didn't belong to birds. At first, Aaron thought it was wind running the reeds, but the sound held steady. a high, needling whine. He stepped from the truck and shaded his eyes. A small quadcopter hovered above the flats like a bothersome dragonfly, tilting and correcting, its camera winking. Far off, 2 safari vans idled at a distance that wasn't distance enough. By noon, the article was everywhere. Lena Hart's headline, softened but still sharp, ran on half a dozen feeds. Suri's name wasn't used, and no coordinates were given, but the pictures were clear enough. A lioness curled around a striped foal. The improbable tenderness of it. The comments were a wildfire of wonder, disbelief, and argument. Aaron stood in the office doorway, the printout limp in his hand, while the radio on Kamau's desk crackled with requests for statements. "We end it clean," Kamau said, not unkindly. "We separate the foal, transport to rehab, guard the lioness until she moves off. We can't turn a reserve into a stage." Mara's voice was careful. "Stress indicators will spike if we attempt this in public view. The drone alone has changed her behavior. She's not feeding regularly when it's near." "I'll post a perimeter," Kamau replied. "We do it quick, out of sight." Aaron set the printout down. "Or we shut it down for 48 more hours, like we agreed. Pull the vans, ground the drones, give me the evening and the night." Kamau studied him. "I gave you the window. The window just cracked." He reached for a folder, signed, and tore free a single page. "Aaron Ndlovu, you are suspended from field duty pending review. Turn in your keys." The words landed like a door closing softly. Aaron handed over the keys, one by one, feeling their familiar weight leave his palm. He didn't argue. He only looked past Kamau to the map, to the pale rectangle of the northern flats, and held himself still. By late afternoon, the vans had drifted off under orders, but the drone kept reappearing, now from another direction, now a little higher. Suri's ears stayed pinned, her head up more than down. Nuru fidgeted, dozed, then woke, the rhythm broken. Aaron walked the fence line at the edge of the permitted zone, a civilian in everything but his heart. He could not cross the line, so he kept pace with it, step for measured step, listening to the nagging whine, thin and swell, wishing he could swat it from the sky with nothing more than a raised hand and the quiet that used to follow him like a friend. The storm came in layers, first the hush, then the smell of rain, then the rumble that made the windows in the ranger huts shiver. Out on the flats, the air turned cool and pricked with static. Aaron waited at the fence line until the first fat drops began to pock the dust, then slipped into the dark on foot, a flashlight tucked away to keep his hands free. Suspension or not, he could not make himself stay behind a rule while the sky opened over the two he had promised to watch. The grass slicked under his boots. Lightning stitched the horizon, sewing brief white hems along the edge of the world. When the thunder rolled, it rolled low, a long barrel of sound that hid other noises until they were close. He heard them then, the soft, busy weave of feet, the small barks and giggles that never sounded like laughter to anyone who knew the meaning. Hyenas, many of them, reading the same weather he did, running the scent lines that rain smears and sharpens by turns. Suri rose before Aaron saw the first shapes. Her body made a wall between the wind and the foal. Nuru pressed close, eyes bright and unsure in the flicker of lightning. Aaron moved to the dry wash he'd used before, tore open a flare, and laid its red heart on the lip of the gully, then another farther down. The rain fought the flames. The flames persisted, a stubborn glow that said there were easier meals elsewhere. The first hyenas broke off, confused by the light and the sharp tang he'd dragged through the wash. But the rain thinned, and with it the cover of noise, and another sound rose from the south, low, steady, too measured to be scavengers. A lone male lion, head high, pacing the boundary of his small, temporary kingdom. Aaron knew the look of a drifter, a roamer who answered to hunger more than to pride. Quito, the field cameras had tagged him. Now he angled toward the knoll, drawn by milk and motion. A rock skittered behind Aaron. He turned in time to see Tariq, hood up, slide on the wet slope and stumble into open ground. Quito halted, eyes fixing on the sudden movement. The young man froze, hands out, not quite understanding the math of distance and intent. Aaron stepped out, raised the flashlight, and snapped it on full beam, throwing a bright coin of light straight at the lion's face. Quito blinked, head tilting. Aaron fired a single shot into the air. The thunder caught the sound and carried it. Quito flinched, reconsidered, and flowed sideways into the taller grass. Tariq scrambled back, heart in his throat. I'm sorry, he whispered. Stay behind me, Aaron said gently, and breathed. The rain softened to a fine curtain. Suri lowered her head, touched Nuru once with her nose, and settled again, the small world of their shelter holding. Aaron kept watch until the storm spent itself, knowing dawn would demand a different kind of courage. Dawn came thin and silver, the kind of light that makes the plain look washed and new. The storm had combed the grass flat and left a clean smell in the air, a mix of wet dust and crushed green. Aaron stood a long way off on the lee side of a termite mound, binoculars steady, letting the morning sort itself. Suri was there, exactly where he'd hoped, curled like a windbreak, ribs rising slow. Nuru stood on wobbly legs, then leaned into her with the trust of the very young, eyes half closed, tail making small, uncertain circles. He eased the radio to his lips and kept his voice low. Vitals looked steady, no fresh distress. A quiet click answered. A few minutes later, Mara crested the far slope, stopping well short of the pair. She didn't raise a hand or wave. She only knelt and studied the ground, as if reading a page. Hoof marks, she said, when they met halfway between mounds. Adults. A small herd cut through here in the night, maybe just before the rain eased. See the sharper edges? They haven't had time to round off. Aaron crouched and traced a print with his finger. They're close. Mara set her field bag down, but didn't eat open it. I prepped electrolytes in case and a quiet transfer kit, but I'm hoping not to use either. They stood without talking. The plain had that Sunday morning hush it sometimes wears, birds testing single notes, a francolin calling once and thinking better of it. For a while, Suri dozed, then lifted her head to taste the air. She didn't seem hungry exactly. She seemed to be measuring, filing away scents the way a careful mind files away dates. Tariq joined them from the long way around, breath easy, boots wet to the laces. Perimeter's clear, he whispered. No vans. Drone didn't show at dawn. Good, Aaron said. Let's keep it quiet. They took turns glassing the horizon, trading the binoculars as if the act itself could keep the morning orderly. Once, Suri rose and nudged Nuru to his feet, then pressed him down again with her chin when he wobbled too fast. The gesture was firm, even a touch rough, but there was nothing careless in it. Mara shaded her eyes. If the herd is within a mile, she'll know. She may do something we're not ready for. Aaron nodded. Then we'll be ready not to move. They settled back into stillness, letting the hours stretch. The day warmed by inches. For the first time since the collar pinged, Aaron felt the knot under his breastbone loosen. Somewhere beyond the next rise, a life waited to be returned, and the mother who wasn't one by blood seemed to understand the route better than any of them. By mid-morning, the heat drew wavering lines over the flats, and the air tasted faintly of dust and sun-warmed grass. Suri rose without hurry, shook rain from her coat that wasn't there anymore, and stood looking north, the way a traveler studies a road she already knows. Nuru nosed at her flank, then bobbed after her as she stepped off the knoll and started a patient, angled walk toward the low country. Aaron, Mara, and Tariq shadowed them at a long remove, keeping to the folds in the land. No one spoke. It felt wrong to break the quiet when the world itself seemed to be holding its breath. After a half mile, The ground dipped to a narrow ribbon of water no wider than a lane. Suri paused to let Nuru drink. He took quick, nervous sips, lifting his head often like any youngster who has had to learn caution too early. Beyond the ribbon, the earth rose again and spread into a plain stippled with dark shapes. Mara lifted the binoculars, then passed them to Aaron. "There," she said softly. "A small herd, 12, maybe 15. Through the glass, Aaron saw them. Zebra, with their ears like open hands, tails flicking, heads up and down as they fed and watched. Suri stood for a long moment, letting the wind do its work. Nuru pressed against her, then leaned away, uncertain. When she moved again, it was not to close the distance directly, but to arc along the edge of the herd's scent, a crescent that kept her just outside their easy tolerance. At the point where the wind shifted, Suri stopped. She lowered her head to Nuru's shoulder, breathed there, and then did something that tightened the skin on Aaron's arms. She gave a low, rough sound, nothing like the big, open roar people expect, just a short, stern note from deep in the chest. Nuru flinched, startled, and took 2 quick steps away. Suri repeated the sound, a little firmer, her whiskers forward, her tail a metronome of intent. Nuru broke, not in panic, but in that urgent, stumbling run of the very young. He angled toward the herd because that was where the safety smelled like himself. The nearest mares wheeled, necks arched, hooves planting sharp warnings. For a breath, the whole plain hung on the question. Then a lead mare huffed, stepped forward, and circled tight. The others opened just enough for a small, striped body to slip inside the moving ring. Suri did not follow. She stood with the wind in her face, watching until Nuru's small shape was only another rhythm in the herd's stripes. Then she turned without flourish and walked back the way she had come. No victory lap, no glance over her shoulder, just the quiet dignity of a task finished because it needed doing. Aaron lowered the binoculars. "That will do," he said, more to the day than to anyone, and felt something long knotted inside him finally come loose. They met in the small conference room where the ceiling fan ticked like a slow clock. Kamau sat at the head of the table, papers squared. Mara had a laptop open to charts and a few careful stills. Tariq kept his hands folded, knuckles pale. Aaron took the seat near the window, where the blinds striped the floor like quiet bars. Lena Hart stood by the door with her notebook closed, the posture of someone ready to listen before speaking. Kamau began without heat. "Field suspension remains in effect while we review last night's actions and the leak that brought attention to the site. Dr. Rokoth?" Mara tapped the keyboard. "Here are comparative outcomes for orphaned herbivores taken into rehab within 48 hours versus those shielded briefly in situ. Survival improves when separation is timed to the animal's stress threshold and social opportunities." She clicked again. A short clip played. Suri at the little stream, the stern, low note, the foal breaking toward the herd, the mares closing ranks. "This is the handoff," Mara said softly. "Natural reintegration, guided but not forced." Kamau watched the screen, then looked at Aaron. "You lit flares. You discharged a warning shot. You violated a direct order." "I did," Aaron said, "to prevent a preventable loss and to avoid turning a private moment into a spectacle." Tariq cleared his throat. "Sir, the leak was mine. I sent 2 stills to Ms. Hart, thinking it would help people care. I didn't think about the drone that would follow." He glanced at Lena. Lena met Kamau's eye. "I'll own my part. The piece should have been framed as caution, not curiosity. I'm prepared to run a second story. No locations, no identifying detail, about why restraint protects lives." Silence held a moment longer. The fan kept time. Then Kamau set his pen down. "Mr. Ndlovu, your suspension is lifted but replaced with a formal reprimand. Dr. Okoth, draft a pilot protocol for tightly controlled short-term shielding of unusual bonds when reintegration is feasible." Mara nodded. "I'll call it liminal care, temporary protection with a clear path back to species-specific life. Make sure the path is the point, Kamau said, and lock down media access until cases are closed. When the meeting broke, Aaron stepped outside. The afternoon light lay warm on the yard, smelling faintly of dust and engine oil. He reached into his pocket and touched a small print he had kept for himself. Not the nursing, not the handoff, just two faint tracks pressed side by side in wet earth, then diverging. At the fence line, he paused, lifted his binoculars out of habit, and let them rest. Somewhere beyond the next rise, stripes blurred into stripes, and a lioness walked alone with her head high, having finished what love required and nature allowed. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Before you scroll away, tell me this. Do you believe a bond like theirs could really exist? If this story touched your heart, drop a 1 in the comments so I know you're still with me. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just remind you that sometimes the wild loves us back in ways we'll never forget.